Hey everyone, Obsessive Prepper AZ. Today I am going to make apple oatmeal muffins using food storage. I have done a previous video showing you how to dehydrate apples, and those are my apples back here in my container. I had showed you that if you don't have a pop-top container, these things are awesome. Keeps it tight and sealed, and then all you do is push that little button and you get your apples or whatever your products are. I store my beef jerky in there and I love it. So anyways, moving on. This whole video is using your food storage. In the past, I've told you all that if we're going to, store this food storage, then we need to start using it. And so what I've got here is obviously in my recipe, I'm going to need the apples. And try to find my apple here. Sorry about that. When you dehydrate your apples, this is the texture that they come out to. So they easily break up. And so what I will do is I will break them up in pieces, and then I will put them in my little chopping block here and use my ulu. And if anybody that doesn't know what an ulu is, this is from Alaska. It's your curved knife. And then, I like the chopping block that I get from this because it has a well in it. And so then you can just pretty much go in and chop whatever products you want. I mean, by all means, use your chef knives, whatever, but little projects, I like to use my board. It reminds me of when I went to Alaska, and that's where you can pick one up, or if you order it online. So, okay, going to food storage. Now, in this recipe, it calls for a cup of shredded apples. Now, I didn't have shredded. I just showed you what I did is I chopped them up. So what I did is I went in this bowl and I put half a cup of apples, because it calls for an entire cup. But half a cup of apples reconstituted with hot water and sat will turn to 1 cup of apples. So that's what I've got in here. I've already drained it off, and that's just my apples sitting there. You're going to need walnuts for this recipe. You're going to need buttermilk powder. And with the buttermilk powder, buttermilk, but I'm using the powder, again, food storage. So what you're going to do is 2.5 teaspoons, I'm sorry, I'm losing it here, 2.5 tablespoons of buttermilk with 1 cup of water will make the cup of buttermilk that we're going to need for this recipe. Also, it calls for vegetable oil. I'm not going to use vegetable oil. I'm going to use coconut oil. If you want to use vegetable oil or whatever oils you want, by all means use it. But I'm using coconut oil in this recipe. My powdered eggs. Now, I could go to my refrigerator and pull 1 egg out, but the point is to show you using your food storage. So you're going to need 2.5 tablespoons of egg powder, and then 2.5, almost 3 tablespoons of water to reconstitute your eggs. But I'm not going to do it where I mix it up. I'm just going to add it to the mixing bowl, and then I'll show you how I do that. You're going to need cinnamon, baking powder, baking soda. Now, the recipe doesn't call for vanilla, but I love using vanilla in all my baked goods, so that's what I'm going to put in it. I also add a little pumpkin pie seasoning. Now, I could add some nutmeg, and the recipe doesn't call for it, but I like it in there, and so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, going on this side, oatmeal, you're going to need 2 cups of oatmeal. You're going to need brown sugar, 1/2 cup. And on brown sugar, if you don't have brown sugar in your food storage, by all means make your own. White sugar and molasses will make your brown sugar. Then you'll also need your flour, which you're going to need 1.25 cups flour. And then also I use the pure cane, the washed raw sugar, and I sprinkle that on top of my muffins. So anyways, that's the ingredients that you're going to need. I'm going to go ahead and mount my camera, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our wet ingredients first. So I went ahead and added 1 cup of water to my mixing bowl, and that is going to be for the buttermilk. Now, if you have buttermilk in your refrigerator, by all means use it, but this whole segment is just showing you what to do with your food storage and how to use it. So I've got 1 cup of your water in there, and then what you're going to need to do to make 1 cup of buttermilk is you're going to need 2.5 tablespoons of buttermilk. And now I'm not going to get perfect on the measurement on it because a little bit isn't going to kill you. So that's what you've got there. Now, like I had said, in my recipe, it calls for 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I am not going to use vegetable oil. I'm going to use my coconut oil. I like the health benefits of using coconut oil, and so that's what I'm going to use. Now, by all means, whatever kind of oils that you want to use, go ahead and use. So I've got my 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. Get that off there. Okie dokie. Get that out of the way. Okay, the next thing we're going to need is 1 egg. And 1 egg is 2.5 tablespoons of eggs. So that's your egg mixture. Now, if you have an egg and you want to use it in your refrigerator, by all means, use it. But it's going to be 2.5 tablespoons. So I've got 2 there and then 1/2. So that's my 2.5 tablespoons. Then what you're going to do is 2.5 tablespoons, you're going to need about 3 tablespoons of water. They tell you that you can do just the 2.5, but it's not going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 tablespoons of water in there. So that's my 1 egg. So I'm going to go ahead and start mixing that up a little bit. Okie doke. Now, I don't ever measure like dry ingredients separate than wet ingredients. I don't waste the time doing that. If that's what you guys want to do, then go for it. I just don't even bother with it. So, I mean, you can see that my coconut oil is kind of still lumped to my paddle. But if I put the brown sugar in it, it's going to mix in there just fine. So what you're going to need is 1/2 cup of brown sugar. And then, like I said, get that going, that'll mix. Okay, the next ingredient I'm going to need is 2 teaspoons. Let me dry out my little measuring thing here. You're going to need two teaspoons of baking powder and then a 3/4 teaspoon of salt and soda. So my 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And then I'm going to need 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. And then 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Okay. Also, you want to have your oven preheated at 400 degrees. Then, like I had said, on the cinnamon, what you need is 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then these ingredients are optional if you want or if you don't. Now, like I said, I don't ever bake without a little bit of vanilla. I love my vanilla, so I'm going to put probably like 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla in there. And then also I'm going to add some pumpkin pie seasoning, and I'm going to call it 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie seasoning. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. Alrighty, so I've got all those ingredients in there. Now what I'm going to go ahead and put in there is my apples. And that's your 1 cup of apples reconstituted. And like I said, in the recipe, I modify recipes. So the recipe calls for a cup of shredded apples. I am using a cup of my chopped up apples. Get that all mixed in there. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to add is you need your oatmeal and you need your flour. So I'm going to add my flour in first. And my flour, it calls for 1.25 cups of the flour. Make a little bit of a mess here. And then just slowly blend that. You don't want it to go all over the place. And you don't want to over mix your flour, so I just wanted to get it in there and get it blended. The next thing I'm going to add is my 2 cups of oatmeal. And it's going to be a lumpy mixture, clearly, so that you're fine with that. Now this is where I want to get my spatula, and I want to scrape down my sides so we get everything incorporated together. It already smells good. It's excellent. All those flavors popping out already. Okie doke. Got all that combined. The next ingredient, now this can be optional to you if you want it or not. The recipe calls for it, and what it calls for is a ½ cup of walnuts. So I've gone ahead and went in there and chopped my walnuts up. I'm going to mix those in. Alrighty, yummy. Get this out of here. So that is how easy this mixture is. You know, it's probably more time consuming me pulling it out, trying to show everything as far as a video is concerned, of all the dried ingredients, but super easy to make if you don't use your food storage and you're just wanting this as a recipe. But after, like, I've opened up my buttermilk, and I showed you this entire container of buttermilk. Now, there is no way on earth this number 10 can of buttermilk I'm going to go through. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is break this down. I'm going to put it in food saver bags, and then one of them I'm going to put in a quart-sized mason jar, and then that way I can have them all separately sealed. And so as I use this can, then what I can do is if I use it, then I can go get my food saver bag or and use it. So don't open up a can and just leave it. If you've got means to either putting it in your mason jars with an oxygen absorber, if you've got that little lid that goes over the top of your mason jars to suck the air out, or your food saver bags, do that. Break this can up, put it into several different containers, get the air out of it, and then that way this will store a lot longer, because their guidelines are is once you've opened up a can, it's going to last a year. But if you take the oxygen out, it'd be no different than sealing in this. So immediately get this into your other containers. Just a kind of heads up. And that is what I did with my egg mixtures, because I buy there was a shortage a couple years back on eggs, and so I bought a huge box of eggs, and I put them in my food saver bags, in my number 10 cans, and then also in my mason jars. And so when I get done using my mason jar of eggs, then what I'll do is go get the food saver bag, I'll open it up and pour it in here, and that's what I will do with that. So definitely, by all means, use your food storage. Keep it rotated and turned. Okay, so what I will use, and yes, I'll probably get knocked 9 ways from Sunday from everybody, but I love this stuff. What an easy way of baking without having to sit there and individually, you know, grease your pan, flour, knock it out. So, I mean, if anybody's never used, I mean, if you have not used this, so simple. There's several different brands out there, and yes, it's not the healthiest, but super easy. So that's what I will do. Now go in. I've showed you in past videos, I love my scoops. They're perfect measuring. It doesn't take a lot to have to sit there and figure out measuring, and it doesn't make a mess. And it's super fast to do it this way. So, like I said, your oven's at 400 degrees, preheated. You're going to cook these for 20 minutes. Let me get over here to my recipe real quick. 23 to 25 minutes. So this will do 2 dozen of these apple muffins. I shorted that a little bit. Okie doke. And then what I will do is I will, just for aesthetic looks, now you don't have to, but I use this raw sugar. And then what I will do is I'll sprinkle raw sugar over my muffins. And that's my little mixture. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do my other tin of, there you go, sorry, my tin of muffins. I'm going to go ahead and do my other tin. I'm going to put them in my oven, 400 degrees, for give or take 23 minutes, and then I'll bring you back once those are all set. Okay, my muffins are out of the oven. First of all, I had told you I followed a Good Housekeeping recipe, and they had said and recommended 400 degrees for 23 to 25 minutes. Well, at 400 degrees, there was no way these things would have been in the oven that long. I pulled them out at 15 minutes. So buyer beware, or read your recipes, but follow your own guidelines. Start testing your products before the time, because I would have had burnt muffins. So the whole point of this video was to show you how to use your food storage, rotate it, and use it. So what we used was our dehydrated apples, our powdered eggs, our buttermilk powder, and our oatmeal. And I have to say that I had added that pumpkin pie seasoning. I only put a ½ teaspoon in. I'm going back now, I would have probably put a whole teaspoon in. They have flavor, but I think with an extra ½ teaspoon it would have been really, really tasty. They're good. They're just not a sweeter, like full flavored. So I would have definitely used an additional ½ teaspoon of my seasonings there. The only other thing I would have changed in the recipe, because it had called for 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and I'd used the coconut oil. They come out a little drier with the coconut oil. So instead of the 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, I probably would have added at least another tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half. So I'm going to call it like, try 3½ tablespoons of your coconut oil. Because they're really good. They're just a little bit crumbly. So like some muffins, you can just pick them up and they're fine. These are crumbling a little bit. So I would definitely say to use at least 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, or stick with your vegetable oil. But other than that, they're very yummy. I've ate 2 of them, and my husband's ate 1 of them. And out of the mix, it said 24 muffins. I only got 21 muffins out of the whole mix. But yummy, and use your food storage. You all have a blessed day.